Well, hello and welcome to another installment of Benson Live. We appreciate your interest and time to join us today as we spotlight the promising aspects of all things Paso Cab. Why not, right? My name is Marie Christina Batiche of the Benson Marketing Group, and I'll be serving as your moderator today. We will be joined shortly by a panel of winemakers who will be discussing the Paso Cabs that they make and sharing their latest and greatest insights when it comes to hospitality, new techniques, and any challenges they or others in the region are presently dealing with. So let's get into it. With a few Paso Robles wines in the Benson Marketing Group's client roster, it's really no surprise that we're positive on Paso Cabs. Could Cabernet Sauvignon be the king still in the U.S. wine market? The region has long been known as a region that delivers all of the fruit and structure wanted in a cab for more approachable prices. That's a good thing, right? These are wines to be enjoyed with family and friends at any time and not stored away for those super special occasions like that of other Cabernet Sauvignon. But don't take our word for it. First up, let's get some consumer receptivity and marketing sales insights from Jeff No, SVP of Marketing for WX Brands, who we had a chance to speak with earlier. He is, WX is the company behind Chronic Cellars and True Myth, two of the four notable wineries that we're going to be showcasing today. So let's roll that video, Alex. Jeff, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Why do you think consumers like Paso Cabs?
Yeah, I think it's a number of reasons. I think first of all, it's an up and coming wine region that when you go to it, you can see and taste the exceptional quality of the wines, but it also has that sort of pioneering and innovation spirit that consumers like to see when they see new generation of winemakers that come into Paso. And so I think when you have people that are coming into the category or people that are very seasoned, they can see the quality of it, but also they can see the sense of discovery within the region. And then stylistically, if you look at Paso Cab or you taste it, it's got those big, bold flavors, but also the rich, opulent texture balanced with, the bright acidity and approachable tannin. So it's not over the top. And I think that balance between opulence and brightness really is caused by the fact that Paso has this great terroir, right? Which is, you've got that climate that's really hot, but then cools down. You've got that diurnal shift, but also you've got the sub-AVAs within the west side and the east side that bring different nuances to the variety into the cab in general.
Can you give us some data on the growth of Paso Cabs in the last, say, 5 years? And can you name any specific drivers for this growth?
The category has just been on fire. If you look at Paso Cab in the last 52 weeks, and I'm using Nielsen data, which is essentially the scan data out of retail locations, it grew 21% in the last 52 weeks. And if you look at the overall cab category, still very healthy at growing at 7.2%, but you can see that Paso's been growing at 3 times that amount. And if you dive even further, it's really attributed to the higher price point wines. So plus $20 cab or Paso Cab has been growing at 43%. The $15 to $20 category has been growing at 11%, and then $12 to $15 has been growing at 9%. So all outpacing the overall cab category. And then if you think about what makes up the most amount of volume within those segments, it is that $12 to $15 segment, a little bit higher price point than the fighting varietal segment, but makes up about 51% of that total category.
Do you think consumers are ready to put a lens, perhaps, on the different districts of Paso Robles for maybe a better, deeper understanding of the various wine styles?
Yeah, I mean, I think they are. If you look at consumers and their understanding of Paso Cab, there's always going to be the delineation between east side and west side of the highway. And each of them bring unique characteristics. You've got the east side, which is very fruit driven, versus the west side that has those chalky tannins, dusty tannins, blue fruit. But you combine those two and you've got some amazing flavor profiles for Cab that I think is different than other regions around the world and certainly around the country. But also the sub AVAs that are developed within the east side and west side. There's now 11 of them that were all developed in 2014. I think it brings different flavor profiles. It brings different characteristics within it. You're going to hear from the winemakers about why they're different, coming up. But it's really exciting because consumers can then go try and see what is their favorite within it, all under the sort of the umbrella that it's all phenomenal Cab.
Good stuff, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing your insight. Looking forward to keeping things positive for Paso Cab.
So good. Thank you. Thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
See you soon.
We've got some really nice nuggets here. His insights indeed provide some context and support of why consumers should be looking to Paso. So looking at that as a fast growing plus 21%, I mean, that's pretty major. And there's a lot of great stuff here, knowing that those smaller price categories from the 12 to 14.99 is increasing, along with 15 to 19.99, some of your wines we have here today. And that plus $20 segment, look at that, plus 43%. That's pretty amazing stuff. So let's speak to our panelist of winemakers. First up, we have Rob Takigawa. Rob is the Director of Winemaking for Balliana Winery at WX Brands, which includes True Myth, a wine he'll elaborate on. He's been making wine in SLO for over 20 years now. Each vintage has furthered Rob's knowledge of growing and making excellent wines in Paso Robles. He's a native of Central Coast, a graduate of Cal Poly with a soil science degree. And after first understanding basically the science side of wine, Rob was essentially inspired to get his hands dirty and ventured into the winemaking side in 1997. And from there, honestly, he never looked back. Just a side note, he's also an avid surfer for all you writers out there that love those kinds of nuggets when working on winemaker profiles. Rob, go ahead, take it away and say hello to our audience today.
Hello, yeah, thank you for having us. It's always a joy to be a part of this this program and be on a panel of some really great winemakers. Balliana Winery, we're actually down in the valley of San Luis Obispo. It's quite different from the Paso Robles area. And the valley is a cool climate, very coastal influenced AVA, being able to work with Paso fruit is just it's something that is really exciting for us and for me. Our first vintage was in 2012, but I really do consider myself to be the newbie of this group. I'm still just trying to learn the whole AVA. There's 11 sub AVAs in Paso Robles, but that's what really makes working in Paso Robles so exciting. There's always something new. There's always something new and exciting. There's a certain area. What can that contribute to a wine? How can we utilize these different AVAs? And so just kind of piecing together all these great little nooks and crannies in every corner of the Central Coast, which is Paso Robles. It's been a great adventure. And like I said, 2012 was the first vintage that we released. Here we are. Just about to release a 2018, and I'm still considering myself a student of this area, and that's what just makes it so exciting.
Very good. Thank you for that, Rob. We're happy to have you on board today.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move over to the other WX brand in the portfolio for Paso that we are featuring today. Let's speak with Kip Lorenzetti for Chronic Cellars. Gosh, I just love those Chronic Cellars labels. Kip's winemaking career has taken him around the world, but he has called Paso Robles home for more than 5 years now. Prior to Chronic Cellars, he was the winemaker at Wild Horse Winery and Vineyard, a pioneer in the Paso Robles area. As far as Chronic Cellars goes, it's the mission of them to bring nuances of those 11 different sub AVAs of Paso into their wines. So they always say good wine is in the winery's bones. And I think that speaks loudly given the skeletons all over the label. Kip also is an avid surfer. So kudos to you, Kip. Go ahead, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and present and chit chat with all these winemakers on the call. Like MC was saying, with Chronic, we're here to try and express the region and really try and show every bit of our region, of the diversity of our region as we can. My first vintage in wine was in 2010. Was actually working under Rob at Bailiana. That was my first harvest gig when I was just a pup in the industry. And 12 years later, 12 years later, Rob and I are working together, which is pretty killer. One thing, touching on the fact that Rob and I are both surfers, and we're not the only surfing winemakers in Paso. There's just a litany of us. One of the things I chatted with when taking over for Josh Beckett, who's the founder of the brand, he and I both agreed, there's a good section of us that are just surf bums who love to make wine. I mean, and we're hyper passionate about both of those things. So we try to carry that kind of attitude in with Chronic, to where we're very serious about how we make the wines and what we put together and what we express, but we also at the same time try to keep a level of irreverence about ourselves, not take ourselves too seriously. And so with our 2019 Serial Cab, which you should all have in front of you, hopefully. So this is a 93% Cab and 7% Syrah. So with just a quick rundown on that wine. So the Cab comes from the Paso Highlands region, which if any of you have an AVA map in front of you, is the far eastern, as far as you can go east in the AVA. High elevation, very warm, creates a lot of bright red fruit, but also a lot of structured tannins. It's so high up, it gets very cold there at night. And a little bit in the San Juan district, which is a little bit farther inland, where the Syrah comes from. It gives a little bit of a high cedar note and a little bit of that kind of Aussie Shirazi note on the top end of the wine.
Duly noted. Awesome. Well, looking forward to tasting this one. Okay, let's move on to Megan McCollough for Smith & Hook Wines. Smith & Hook from the Hahn family wines. Megan is a California native who first saw Smith & Hook vineyards being planted by Nicky Hahn, the founder, the late founder of Hahn family wines. Megan herself has nearly a decade of winemaking experience and is the lead winemaker of Smith & Hook. Today, she is going to be presenting to us what I like to call her baby, but no mistake, this 2018 Smith & Hook Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon from Paso is no baby. He's quite a big boy, if you will. Megan, why don't you go ahead and talk to our audience?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to resonate with Rob and Kip on something real quick, that Rob, I do still, I feel like a student of the region as well, just like you, and Kip, your passion for winemaking, I wanted to resonate with as well. And that's, my goal is to make great wines. So yes, I do have a decade of experience, but I do still feel like a student oftentimes. I have been with Smith & Hook for 10 years, in the industry for about 15. My first job was in a tasting room, and some connections for that. A really beautiful area. Can't speak enough about positive on Paso. Showcasing today is our Reserve Smith & Hook Cab, our first vintage, 2018. I'm so proud to say that it's 100% from Paso Robles, because what a great high grade appellation for growing cab quality grapes. It's where we source the majority of our fruit under the Smith & Hook umbrella. Not only are there phenomenal vineyards, but it's really stepped up its game to provide a luxury brand. We love the quality of fruit from Paso, and that's why we chose it for the reserve specifically. The fruit is just so intensely, Bing cherry notes and dark fruit, really showcasing those dark fruit notes from Paso. This wine in particular, we age on 60% new French oak. And that really showcases all those caramel, vanilla, and leather notes. The balance of it being 40% neutral barrel. I like this balance because that percentage really helps to concentrate and bring out some layers and depth. It's really well received for this reserve wine.
Yeah, it's awesome. I actually noticed, I found it helpful to let it breathe a little bit, like a good 45 minutes or so before really tasting it. Gotta say to everybody right now, I mean, we'll get it to Anthony in just a second, but it's a little after 4 o'clock here on the East Coast, and I'm already thinking about having baby back ribs for tonight.
Do it.
So let's move on. Thank you for that, Megan. Appreciate you being here. Let's move on to Anthony Riboli from Riboli Family Wines with the San Simeon wines. Anthony is a 4th generation family winemaker. He received his MS in viticulture from the University of California, UC Davis. And since apprenticing under Michael Weiss at Growth in Napa, he has led winemaking and grape growing for the California portfolio at Riboli Family Wines, a robust portfolio of different varieties and blends, of course. Anthony's foremost goal has been a meticulous focus in the vineyards as well as winemaking at Riboli Family's state-of-the-art facility in Paso Robles. Writers, listen, go visit this place. It's super cool. Anthony is presenting the San Simeon Cabernet 2018. Anthony, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, MC. Well, first of all, it's always great to be with a group of winemakers, and you put us all together, and we're getting old, Rob. That's all I gotta say. So, you know, being a family business is probably the first thing I always want to talk about. We'll talk about the wine, but you know, we are a fourth generation family business now, and have always been in California wine. That's what we do, and so being able to invest in this area, you know, we were buying grapes many years ago, but as a family, we really wanted to put our roots down, and Paso Robles has really become that area. And owning vineyards and focusing on vineyards, and now having the new winery to really, you know, keep the quality as high as we possibly can. And that's been the greatest, you know, I'd call it blessing, if you will, to be able to have those things. Because when I first started in 1998, you know, we were buying grapes, which, hey, it's great buying grapes. We can all do that. And there's wonderful vineyards in this area, but owning it ourselves was just something we really had a passion. My grandfather, he actually was the one who said, hey, we need to do this. And so, but this area is amazing. And even being, you know, this long doing it, it's changing. Every year it changes. The plantings, the varietals, the clones, I mean, you name it, we're going to get into it, is truly amazing. But San Simeon is a brand that we've created as a family. The name refers to the coastal town just west of the region of Paso Robles. That's where the lighthouse comes from. But we've really tried to focus on, again, our own vineyards. This mainly comes from the El Pomar district, which is known for its, you know, soils, and especially the calcareous soils, which are very unique to this area. And so really we're trying to show the dark fruit. I go back to that, the dark fruit that people associate with Cabernet Sauvignon, whether it's from Napa or Sonoma or other places. And Paso Robles has really been able to, in the last, I'd call it 10 years, really push forward with that dark fruit character and defining a unique style. So you know, for wherever you are from, writers, this region is going to continue to spread. And again, it's going to take time. On the East Coast, Paso Robles is not as well known as on the West Coast, but as we all work together to spread the word, that's the goal. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Anthony. We really appreciate you being here and sharing some of that deeper insight, especially with the role of family, how all that plays into the region, of course. We are starting to get a couple of questions in the chat function, so we'll get to that shortly. But let's go ahead and just start with the big question at hand, if that's what brings us all here today, especially following Jeff No's insight on the incredible sales growth and consumer receptivity to Paso Cabs. Why do you each think that Paso Robles Cab is growing in popularity and being received so well? Anthony, do you wanna kick this off if there's any particular insight, especially maybe from that tourism side that you've seen over time?
There we go. Sorry. Well, tourism's continuing to grow, and I think again, it's very much the word of mouth, and I think as part of it is sharing experiences. And yes, when you come visit, it is very different. And I'm not saying better than Napa or Sonoma, just different. And there is a very tight-knit group of winemakers, and also the feel when you come visit is different. That part is definitely different. There is a more laid-back feel, although wine quality continues to improve every vintage from the area, and styles continue to evolve. But it's an exciting place. So I think if you haven't been, you got to come visit and tell your friends about it, because that's always the best. TripAdvisor doesn't work as well as a firsthand advice from a friend. So,
or just call your cell phone directly. No, I'm just kidding. Kip, what about you?
I teeing off of what Anthony was saying as well as what Jeff was saying, I think the feel of the region definitely has its own feel. We're very welcoming here. I think it's there's a certain feel, again, not to say we're better than anybody else, but the feel here is very welcoming, and everything. There's a lot of opportunities to try diverse styles. You can be one winery to the next, have this person's cab and have it be completely different than the cab from the person next, or the winery next door, and all within, you can probably 30 minutes driving radius. We've got 300 wineries in Paso, at least that was the count last I checked. And everybody brings something different to the table. So I think the diversity of the region and the different expressions of traditional varietals are really appealing to consumers and really drawing people to the area.
Very good. Megan, any thoughts from your end?
I just want to touch on what Anthony said, and Paso's vibe. It's not pretentious. It's a vibe that brings in something for everybody. And it's really about the connection, the people behind the counter, the people behind the vineyards, people in the cellar. You often get to meet them when you're tasting or enjoying a vineyard tour. So it's all really unique. And like I said, not pretentious. The vibe is just good. All around, I think it brings a lot of smiles, a lot of education, a lot of diversity too. And a lot of, like Anthony said too, touching on that family owned and second, third generation families still at it. And that's what people like to see. They like to see the blood, sweat, and tears behind it.
Blood, sweat, and tears. Rob, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone pretty much covered it all, but the community out here is just incredible. I work in San Luis Obispo, but I live up here in Templeton, so I am on this side of the grade, and just on my block alone, there's 3 winemakers on the street that I live on, and so the diversity of the soils and the AVAs in Paso Robles is just a reflection of Paso Robles itself. It's just an amazing place. You can go from one end of Paso and go to a complete opposite side and just be in a completely different place. The community, the old generations of growers are still around. You still have that small time feel. But like I said, and like what everyone else has said, community is the biggest thing around here in Paso Robles. And tourism is definitely growing for sure, but just because it's just so hospitable here, it's hard to avoid. I mean, we're right off a 101 between San Francisco and LA. It's a really easy stop off and just come in and enjoy the area for sure.
Awesome. All right, good. I want to move into a next question about cab dominance, as some of you are, working with other grapes to supplement in your wines that you're spotlighting today. But we do have a question from the group that I thought was fitting right for this section. So let's see, that Paso Robles has a strong growing reputation for Rhone varieties, especially on the western side. Is there any cab versus Rhone, like any Rhone rivalry that you guys are seeing in the region or want to comment on? If we can just maybe start with Rob here, because I know that you're using some Syrah, for instance, in your True Myth wine that you're showing today.
Yeah, we do. We have, it ranges anywhere between a 15, 10% Syrah added back from our ranches in San Luis Obispo. And really that just kind of started when we first started getting started in 2012. There was a need for us to really add a little something to our cab, a little bit of our own AVA in the valley, which is Cool Climate Syrah, which has this wonderful white pepper. It's got this opulence to the wine. It gives it some really nice, juicy texture to the wine. And so, yeah, we do blend a little bit of our very own Syrahs from a Graf clone down in the Enda Valley, just to kind of give it that little bit of a twist to the wine. Whether we continue with that trend, we don't know. I mean, it's not set in stone. If we can, it's whatever does best for the wine. I mean, we talk so much about these different AVAs. Who knows? I think it could pop up and certainly replace that. But I know Rhone varietals up here in Paso Robles does really well. I don't see any kind of rivalry. I think maybe Kip and Anthony can speak of it more. They're a little bit more, they source more fruit with those different varietals. But yeah, we do use a little bit of our very own Enda Valley Syrah to give our cabs a little bit of a twist.
Okay, totally makes sense. Thanks for that. Goes to show you, right? As farmers, really, right? You're working vintage to vintage too. So let's move on to Anthony. You're in kind of a similar situation, using a little bit of Petit Verdot.
Yeah, we do. And just to comment about like the rivalry of Rhone versus Cabernet, I don't think there's a rivalry. I mean, I think the region, remember, it was originally known for Zinfandel. Then it became Rhone varietals. Now Cabernet is growing, but I think there's a place for it all. I mean, I do believe that there will be, again, certain regions that do better with certain varietals. And so that's what another amazing part of Paso Robles is. You look at all the varietals that actually do very well, whether Rhone, Bordeaux, Spanish, whatever it is, it's an amazing diversity. So, with that, Petit Verdot is a varietal that, again, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I don't think anybody was growing it, frankly, but we use it typically about 5%, sometimes 10%, depending on the year, just to add some structure, some color. What we love, though, is it just meshes very well with Cabernet Sauvignon. So we don't lose any of the flavor profile of Cabernet Sauvignon, but that Verdot just adds a little bit of oomph, if you will. And so it's kind of our special sauce. But again, there's no right or wrong. This is just, again, every winemaker has their own approach, and that's what makes it fun as well, is there's no single way to do it. So
I love that. The secret sauce sounds like a headline. Okay, let's see. Kip, do you have anything you want to convey there?
To supplement what Anthony and Rob were saying, there's not really a rivalry per se about Cab versus Rhone, especially for growers or winemakers. There's really it's certain certain varietals do very well in certain regions of Paso. And really there's a lot of synergy between that. The other night, I can't remember the winery name, but it was a Cab blend that had Tannat, Syrah, and Petit Syrah in it. It was Cab dominant, it was 50% Cab, but it's all about, and part of the charm of the region, or what makes this place great, is winemakers in our area are willing to drive that. That's that particular wine's a pretty non-traditional blend, but putting all that stuff together and really experimenting and seeing what works, and what Rob said earlier is what serves the wine the best. I think all four of us on here, that's every day we go into our jobs going, what can we do to make this wine better, whichever wine that we happen to be working on. So The short answer is no, there's no real rivalry. It's more of what works best for what project you're working on.
I love that. And I know we don't have all the winemakers from Paso, on an event like this, but I know, and just speaking with you all to put this event together today, you guys are all like real stewards of the land too. So that's really neat to see. Megan, do you want to speak a little bit about some of your varietal additions?
Under the Smith and Hook portfolio, the reserve is 100% cab. So I'm proud to say that, even though I know the Rhones have a lot to offer, we really just wanted to showcase what that is. And we found some really great vineyards to source from. And that will come up in the later questions, so I can touch on that then. But
excellent. All right, so very good. Let's move on into some of these particular aspects of Paso's patchwork. I always like to look at that map like a mosaic, right? So if there's any the various districts within the AVA that bear some of these unique characteristics of the Cabernet that you're using, or if there's any key differentiation in the styles of Cab coming from the various districts, whether that's east of the highway or west of the highway. I don't know, perhaps Kip, do you want to kick this off talking about the sub-AVA diversity?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying, MC, you might have to get the hook on me on this. This is one thing that, much like most topics about winemaking, like we could probably, all four of us on here could pontificate for the next like 3 to 4 hours. I'll try and keep it brief. I mentioned, I touched on it a little bit earlier in my introduction to the chronic wines, so now we've got the map in front of you. So I was saying the Paso Highlands district is probably where the base Cab comes from a little bit, and the Syrah comes from the San Juan Creek region. I was commenting to Anthony, so, with the El Pomar district where Anthony's Cab is from, there is a distinct fruit, and if the writers, whoever's on this call, if you have the wines in front of you, there's a distinct fruit profile difference, with the San Simeon Cab, there's that dark fruit, there's those really chalky tannins. There is a calcareous band that runs through the eastern side of the county, and you can have sites that express that, whereas the site across the street won't, because it won't be in that soil band. Whereas the Templeton Gap district right off of El Pomar, that is in an area where you can see how close we are to the ocean. And I think Rob touched on it earlier, we have the highest diurnal swing of any AVA. Paso can be, as already this year, we've already had a major heat spike. We can be 110 degrees during the day, and as soon as the sun goes down, we'll be back down in the mid-50s at night. So that Templeton Gap, all that cool air from the ocean flows through there. So you get a lot of blue fruit through that area, fruit from that area. Whereas in the York Mountain, it's a very cool climate. So you get a lot of spice. Willow Creek, you get a lot of chalky tannins, a lot of dust. Dust, much like you would taste in a Rutherford or Napa Cab. I mentioned it before to anybody who will listen to me that I call it Paso dust. So I'm trying to make that a thing. So
we'll help you out with that. I think it's a new hashtag.
Appreciate that. Let's get that one going. So you get those, and that dusty tannins. You see that in the Adelaida district too. Again, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but I could show you pictures of Adelaida where the stone, where the farmers out there can't deep rip the fields because they'll start pulling up boulders the size of small sedans. And we can see where grapevines will hit rock and stop growing. So it's alluvial soil. It's also very rocky. So you get this crazy tannin structure out of the fruit out there. To make the circle, the Estrella district, you get a lot of high toned raspberry notes, a lot of plum notes. So just incredible diversity as you kind of make your way through these sub AVAs.
All right, very good. Rob, maybe any specificities from you in terms of the sourcing that you're doing for the True Myth that we're talking about today?
Yeah, we've been sourcing fruit from Paso Robles, since 2012, and our first go at it was with a lot of these old ranchers and growers that had been growing out there for a while. We're mostly out of the Estrella district, some really sandy soils, a little bit higher pHs as we would see as we go a little bit further west in Adelaide and the Willow Creek areas. But since then, we've been able to start exploring different growers and started heading into the San Miguel district, down into the Creston district, and they all offer different profiles to the wine. Like I mentioned earlier, I very much a student of this area. We've been so hyper focused on the Estrella district and all the sandy loam soils there. We're just now getting to the slopey hillsides, the Crestons, with the pH is a little bit lower and be a little bit more acidity. Just that diurnal shift within Paso Robles, in Creston, we get a really long growing season. I was able to experience that firsthand this year and really get some nice development of color and phenolics in that area. So, for me, it's still just a big education, learning these different areas. But yeah, I mean, everything in the Paso Robles offers something different. I can't express that anymore so than the other winemakers can. It's just an incredible journey for me to be able to explore these different AVAs and how it's going to provide to our wine the best.
Awesome. Good. Thank you for that. And then Megan, let's see, you're sourcing mostly from that eastern side. Could you speak to the group a bit about your sourcing from there, why you choose to source from certain vineyards for the Smith and Hook Reserve Cab?
Yeah, definitely. And sorry about that. I got kicked off there. Some heavy winds just came up here. Anyways, we're proud to source from 2 different districts making up the reserve, one being the Estrella district. You'll see that's one of the bigger sub-districts. These vineyards were planted on a dry riverbed. So with that comes some tempered stress, which as humans, we don't like that, but as vines, they need to see a little bit of stress. And that really gives us some brambly, dark fruit notes that showcase so well in this wine. The other district is the Geneseo. And we've been sourcing here since 2005. We're working with a family-owned vineyard who just put in a huge B&B with some fun activities to offer as well on site. But here we see some diverse alluvial soils and a handful of different clones, such as 4, 8, I think 15, and 337. So a little bit of diversity here and some different characteristics that showcase nicely. But somebody else touched upon this. Again, though, there's these huge temperature swings. You can see 40 degrees in the morning and 100 at night, but this is really something to let the vines shut down, relax, and develop naturally and at a slower pace than you would get in different regions. And that, that just brings forth great maturity and ripeness. A little bit stressful when it gets to picking time. I not gonna lie, but we get through it. So yeah.
Sounds good. All right, we do have another question from the group regarding viticultural shifts as it relates to, of course, climate change, which segues just perfectly into our final question for you all, getting into what's going on presently when it comes to hospitality and things working in your favor. And then more importantly, what some of the journalists today are looking for is to hear from you about current challenges that are happening in the region. So how about Anthony, let's start with you on that.
Sure. Well, just to complete the circle on AVAs, I think there's always been this hype about west side, east side, and the freeway is actually that thing that divides it, which has really no basis in viticulture. So I think it's very important to talk about these AVAs and create the uniqueness of them. And again, it's still in its infancy. No one understands. So for example, Creston, where we have 2 vineyards, one of them has calcareous soils and one of them doesn't. In El Pomar, we have Almond Drive, we have 2 vineyards across the street, my grandparents' vineyards. His does not have calcareous soil and hers does. So these are those unique pieces that we're learning more about. And I think it's great because now it'll be like Napa. Look, Napa 30 years ago, yeah, you might have had Rutherford, but you didn't have Coombsville and all these other sub AVAs. So this is a really important evolution for this region, no question. But challenges, of course, every region has challenges. You know, I know firsthand, and all the winemakers will attest to this, water is a big issue. You know, we live in a desert in California, and, you know, Paso Robles, with those warm days, which are very important, you know, there's a lot of heat, and we are all based on well water in Paso Robles. And so, you know, with tourism, there's also more houses needed for all the folks to, you know, live in that are going to support this industry. And so there is a tug of war for water. There's no question. But that being said, you know, the technology in the vineyards and how to be more water wise, there's no question that everyone is doing their part in the region to save water. And that's also true in the winery side. You know, our facility reuses all of its wastewater for either landscaping or out into the vineyard, which again, that didn't happen 20, 30 years ago. So I think this region very much embraces being stewards of the land. And, you know, not that other regions don't, but I think there's just a very strong tie with that in Paso Robles. So, but that is a challenge, no question, but we're doing our part to move forward and long-term vision. So.
Yeah, okay, no doubt with the heat spikes. I mean, that is like a topic that probably comes up quite often. So, Kip, do you want to comment on heat spikes, or if not, a bit more maybe on some of the new techniques taking place in some of the vineyard sourcing?
Yeah, touching on what Anthony said, especially with the use of water, and dealing with, dealing with climate change and watching how each year it's hotter and hotter and hotter. We just had our first triple degree day or heat blast. That was last week, in San Luis Obispo, which is right next to the ocean. It got to 110 degrees, which is unheard of for this. Well, it's not unheard of anymore. It used to be unheard of. It's not anymore. It's third year in a row we've been seeing that. But in the vineyard side, last year, in addition to the wildfires in California, which is again another thing that's unfortunately become the norm, we had during harvest, we had 3 record-setting heat spikes within 2 weeks of each other. So, we're starting to see growers are having to adapt to this. We as winemakers are constantly adapting and hedging our practices to make sure that we can make the best wine possible under these different conditions. And growers are doing the same thing. We're starting to see having to adjust crop loads, because if you have a wine that's loaded heavier than you think that it can carry and a lot of heat, that it's going to damage the fruit. Which in turn will make poor quality wine for us on our end, which in turn will, as winemakers and if we're sourcing fruit, we'll want to get out of those vineyards. So growers are really working hand in hand with us to make sure that they can provide a quality product for us to make good wine out of. So we'll come back. It's a good economic decision for them. But at the same time, it's managing to know in a rapidly changing environment how to, we've said it a few times, and this is just be good stewards to make sure that the practices are right in line with what can be feasible on the land.
Very good. Okay, moving on to Megan. I guess maybe even from a hospitality perspective, Hahn Family Wines, Hahn Estate is up there in the Santa Lucia Highlands. But Megan, I am so excited to hear about this B&B you mentioned earlier. Once we learn more about it, I'm going to remember to ask you about that a couple weeks from now.
Yeah.
Anything you want to convey on your end?
I want to thank Kip for that, commentary upon winemakers and growers alike with the balance between the two. It is sometimes a big struggle, and, you get pressure to pick, and then working with Mother Nature can be challenging too. But something that hasn't been said directly is that, Napa is still, known for producing high quality cabs, and Paso's still, trying to make its own name and be up there. I do want to comment and say that you can like both. They are different, but you can fall in love with both of them in their own ways. But as Paso continues to work through this and educate consumers on the region, and the high quality wines. You know, it's just something that we have to be innovative with, and things like this can reach out to people and get them familiar with the area. Paso's doing a lot though. In the past 5 years, I've seen it grow so much. And in the last, you know, in that time, I've seen restaurants opening up with higher end wine lists, rooftop lounges with those top end wine lists as well, along with wineries downtown being opened up where people don't have to drive. So it's all within walking distance, but you know, you're getting still that high quality environment and feel. You might not be able to see the vineyards, but you know, there's something really for everyone. So yes, Paso is well on its way to educating the world about high quality wines.
Very good. Yeah, lots of room to grow there. Let's shift back to techniques. I think maybe Rob, you had some insights on a bit of that, you know, next generation avant-garde thinking. Is there anything you can relay to the audience today?
Well, I mean, I think what's, you know, like I talked about in my intro, was the excitement that I have for the area. And one of that is attributed to a lot of these new growers that are coming on board and are really taking a winemaking approach to what they're doing on the vineyards. And that's, you know, it's really special for, you know, for all of us, for Megan, Kip, and Anthony, to be able to talk to a grower and relay to them our concerns or what the things that we like, and they're able to put those stuff into action. You know, it's great to have, you know, down in San Luis Obispo, Pinot Noir is grown differently than Cabernet. And so coming up here back in 2012, just big sprawl, high wire vines, and now everything's gone, you know, kind of going to BSP with, you know, with less load on the canopy, less load on the vines, making some really interesting and great wines. But you know, it's just a new generation coming on board that is really hyper focused on bringing the attention to the Central Coast, to Paso Robles, and definitely getting our cab on the map. And you know, you couple that with our amazing Central Coast area. You know, it is exciting for me, and it should be exciting for everyone else too.
That's awesome. Love to hear the enthusiasm. All of you, you're so passionate. And then maybe one last topic, as we're coming to a close pretty soon. Sustainability is often a big topic with our writers. Anthony, do you want to relay a bit on there?
Sure. Well, it's again, sustainability is part of this whole conversation today, frankly. What are you doing, you know, to preserve the land, to make the land healthier for the next generation and the generations after that? But I think what's important to emphasize with sustainability is it's also making better wine. And when Rob and everybody, Kip and Megan, we're talking about, you know, the balance in that focus, sustainability is not just vineyards, it's also in the winery. And if you can bring all those together, again, that's that perfect balance. And I think there's no question in all of our minds on this panel that is the future. And whether things go, you know, organic or not, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but this is just the path. I think that everyone's clear that, you know, less pesticide, less herbicide, the soil being a living thing that needs to have microbial life in it. All of these things come together now in this philosophy. And as newer generations are planting vineyards and beginning their own winemaking projects, that's really a big glue that sticks Paso Robles together.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Big moral of the story too, just, you know, we're open. They're all open for business. So writers, as you start planning your stories out, or like I said, maybe earlier in the event, if you find that you are going to be traveling out to the West Coast and California and want to go visit some of these wineries in Paso Robles, please do contact the Benson Marketing Group. We do have a Cabernet Sauvignon varietal international holiday coming up early September. So if anybody is working towards any roundup stories to that, please let us know if you need some additional samples of Cabernet Sauvignon from the Benson Marketing Portfolio's client roster. We'd be happy to help you all out. Without further ado, I think that will be a wrap. Thank you everybody for joining us today, especially our winemaker panelists, Rob Takagawa, Kip Lorenzetti, Megan McCollough, and of course, Anthony Riboli. We appreciate your time and all of your insights that you shared with the group today. And we'll see you all next time.